This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Really the best in customer service. They try to make sure you're fully insured, and they do a great job of saving you money. It's all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Joined now by the outstanding Neal Coolong, who's doesn't waste time with the Aaron Rodgers watch, but he does have to cover it anyway. Welcome, sir.
That's great. I'm going to write that one down. Yes, that I think is probably the motto of the next, I assume, 6-7 weeks before the draft, which is, I'm going to guess, just call it past experience, of when Aaron Rodgers makes decisions on things. So it definitely creates a bit of anxiety out in the fan base, and we kind of sit and reword the same update every day. We haven't heard anything. He hasn't talked to anybody, and he might choose the Steelers. He might choose the Giants. He might retire. We don't really know enough right now.
Well, what struck me was the rather candid response of Cam Hayward on a podcast, and he kind of reflected how I feel about it. He says, I'm not going in a dark room to talk to him about this. He says, look, just make up your mind. It's like, I got to give Hayward credit. He was blunt.
Yeah, I think that's an understandable message. Now, I don't think it's one that says we'll refuse to accept Aaron Rodgers should he come in, which is probably what everyone's going to say. But I do think there is something to be said over, yes, you're right, you do have your choice. It's your career, it's your body. We understand taking your time, but at the same time, you probably should know by now. I think it's reasonable. Beyond a couple days, I don't think it's too much to ask. And outside of the fact that clearly Aaron Rodgers and his skill set is worth infinitely more than mine is, I don't get to wait that long on something. People want to move on. There's a lot of different things that come with it. I think, to me, it's more just disrespect than anything. And I think that's kind of what Hayward's saying. People need to know what's going on. People need to know what your decision is. I think you owe them that professional respect. Rodgers doesn't seem to feel that way. I would say, I would suggest, though, that I don't think even Rodgers would play this out so long if he was planning on retiring. So at the very least, you know that there is a decision that's going to be made. But maybe to an extent, the decision will be made for him. At what point will the Steelers blink? At what point will the Giants blink? Somebody's going to have to do something at some point, because it's not so much that they want or don't want Rodgers. It's that they're not going to wait around too much longer for him to make a decision. They're going to have to get something locked in, because they can't wait until April and then go scrambling for a starting quarterback. That's just a bad look for everybody. And I would hope that's something that he knows and respects.
Well, I think what I'm going to sense is, when it comes to Cam Hayward, and I think he speaks for a lot of people right now, like, you can't have a guy that appears to feel like the earth orbits around him. All right? You're okay, you're 40 plus years old. Make a decision, because guess what? There's a lot of dominoes that need to fall, and people may just say the heck with you, and they're going to move on from you.
I think that's the main issue. At some point, that's going to happen. And if Rodgers doesn't think that that's inevitable, or it's all that big of a deal, well, I'm not sure what to tell you. They need to move on. It's a business. They need to know what they're doing. And it kind of gets closer every day to, well, what do we do if he doesn't sign? I don't know what the backup plan is for either of those teams short of Russell Wilson. I would think Russell Wilson would be kind of annoyed with the Steelers right now if this is the path that it goes down, especially considering what that would mean is Russell Wilson then has much more leverage because there really isn't anything else. There's a rookie in a draft class that's not particularly good, or there's a veteran that wasn't a starting option last season, let alone this season. So if anything, I would say it's kind of, and maybe Cam is putting that out there. This is just my insight, not, reporting anything, but maybe he understands that. Maybe he's thinking, you know what, we're okay with Russell Wilson. If Rodgers doesn't want to be here, then fine. There's a guy here that does. Why don't you go sign him? At some point, the pressure is going to get put on the Steelers to make that decision. And I don't know when that day is, but there's only so much of this that I think a professional organization should have to deal with, let alone an NFL team that's probably offering $16, $17 million. I would think he'd have enough or what he needs to make a decision by now. More than that, to me, is just grandstanding.
All right, so now we get to this point because pro days are happening. Penn State's pro day will be a week from Friday, which means we really start turning in earnest to the draft. Positionally, in the first 3 rounds, what do you think the Steelers need to address, at least with one of those 3 picks?
I think defensive line is probably the top need for the sake of the future and the present. They're going to need to fill in a little bit more. They just signed Isaiah Loudermilk to a 1-year deal, which is not exactly a real solid, sure thing. It may as well be an invitation to camp. It doesn't mean that he's locked in. I think, though, that bolstering what they have with that unit, with the release of Larry Ogunjobi, which may or may not have been tied with the fact that he failed a PED test and is suspended for the first 6 games of the season, they need somebody that can come in and play right away. That would be my guess. And it's probably the most pressing need as far as a day one impact player. Now, you could say, too, that if a phenomenal player falls, maybe that changes their mind a little bit. But they've got to get somebody that could play right away, considering they don't have a second-round pick. Assuming they don't get one between now and the draft, you got to think that the most solid option that's likely to be available at 21 is going to be defensive line. Now, I would argue, though, that I don't think people saw an offensive tackle going to Pittsburgh last year, and things happened within the draft that kind of screwed things up. And I don't think Troy Fatanu should have gone 20 overall or wherever it is the Steelers drafted. Probably should have been a little bit higher. I think he was, a little bit of a victim of 6 quarterbacks getting taken in the first 12 picks, which was not anticipated by anybody. So, barring a situation like that, I would imagine defensive line is really what they would want to target. It's a good deep position. Even if 4 or 5 of them are drafted, I think there's going to be a good one available at 21. And overall, that's really probably the biggest position in need. I would argue, just considering the situation with George Pickens in terms of his contract, wide receiver is going to be one as well. Luther Burden from Missouri is a guy that a lot of people seem to downplay. Yeah. I don't quite understand why he wouldn't be projected as a first-round pick, but I really like him. Matthew Golden from Texas, I think, is another guy that probably should maybe go a little bit higher than where the Steelers are, but it's possible that he's available. I would have a tough time passing on one of those guys, but you get a guy like the kid from Michigan, the defensive lineman Graham. If he falls, he's somebody good. I think that fits in well with what they would want to do. Probably not a 3-down starter as a rookie, but if they can get a good amount out of him, and the Steelers have gotten a lot out of a lot of defensive linemen over the years, if they could get something from him, I mean, he legit could be a top 10 talent in the class. So I would think their focus would be those 2 positions, but the key one, and people are gonna go crazy over this, running back is a need. That's a position they're going to address at some point. And it's a very good running back draft, but without that second-round pick, you're really looking at, do you want the top or do you want the middle? That's really where they're going to be. the kid from North Carolina, I watch him play, and honestly, the thing I think of most, I don't think there could be a running back that's more Mike Tomlin than this guy, which also means he's probably not a burner to the outside. I don't know how good he is in an outside zone type of scheme, but he can run for power. He does a good job. He's got real quick feet, big body. He's the type of guy that can punish you on the outside, but not a guy that's going to beat you around the corner. Is a guy like that worth 21 overall? In a lot of ways, I think it is. But I would argue, and you and I have talked about this a bunch, the guys at the top of any perceived overall value among running backs in the NFL are guys that are coming in. They don't need 65 snaps a game to make an impact. They're making impacts on a play-to-play basis. Is that what this team needs right now from a first-round pick? I'd probably say not, but I think Mike Tomlin would absolutely love to have that guy. He's just everything about him, the way that he runs, his attitude, everything seems to be very much a Mike Tomlin type of running back. And I'm not predicting it, but I would not be surprised if it's him at 21 either.
Yeah, because you saw about Amari in Hampton, by the way, from North Carolina, who's a junior entry into the draft. He's the kind of guy that, to his credit, when you watch him play, he gets through narrow areas. Like, he doesn't need big holes to get through. He's really impressive. At some point, Travion Henderson's available, and the other guy is Cam Scatterbo. Where these guys do a lot, Henderson, I think, is a big play guy. And if he's sitting there, because Genty will be the first running back to go, but if Travion Henderson's sitting there, and they made a phone call and said, what do you think? I think the guy's got big playability. The question for me is always going to be his durability. He'll always miss some time during a season, but when he gets his hands on the ball, he seems to make a big play every game.
What I get with him, and he's a great one to bring up because I think he fits in line with a modern NFL running back, as in really the last 5 years. It's instinct, and I don't know what that is. It's not something I think you can define by measurables, but you get him on the field, he finds daylight. He runs to daylight. He knows where to go. He knows how to press his advantage physically. He knows how to press leverage against the line of scrimmage. It seems like he is a natural when he's out on the field. Now, is he going to test as the greatest athlete you've ever seen? Maybe not, but I do think there's a lot to love about the idea of just, give him the ball, show him where the gate is to make sure you can get on the field on time, and let him play. I think a guy like that definitely tends to succeed in the NFL on a per carry basis. Now, they're not really. I mean, there are 3-down running backs, but they don't have the value. The offenses are setting these guys up in space to make plays, and a guy like Henderson with the vision that he has, I feel like it's a good investment. He's definitely a top 40 draft pick in my opinion. I don't think he's going to fall lower than that. He's somebody absolutely, I think that you should take. And Scatterbo is interesting as well. I don't think he's quite the, unfortunately you get every stereotype imaginable with him just for, kind of the rarity of who he is with the position. But you're looking at a good all-around back. He's very quick. I can see him being a very effective weapon within the right scheme. He's going to be a scheme fit type of guy. You think Kyle Shanahan, San Francisco, I think could make hay with a guy like that. Should they have the need, but I don't think he necessarily they've got a lot of needs, obviously. Running back might not necessarily be one of them, but a very talented player. I think for obvious reasons, a lot of people are going to say, he's a Pittsburgh guy, blue-collar, lunch pail type of guy. Whatever. I can say this. He's a guy I think at the NFL level can get you tough yards.
Yes.
He's a reasonable receiving option. I don't know if he's a high ceiling type of guy, but probably a round 3 type of back. I could see Pittsburgh, if they still had the need for a running back at that point, I definitely could see them giving him a look.
Yeah, if you're talking about ceiling, Scatterbo, I think, is close to it now for him.
Yeah.
Okay? But what I like about him is he's tough, right? He's got no quit in him. he actually has good hands and as a receiver. But man, he makes a lot of people miss. I mean, people miss tackles on him because I think he's got great balance and his feet are quick, people miss, and he's got some power, and above all, he's got patience, and that's something that part you can't teach.
I agree with that 1,000%. I won't say the name, but there's somebody that jokingly said Scatterbo makes guys miss because guys are coming up to him and not thinking they need to do much to get the white guy with the ball down. But he's deceptively quick. He has very quick feet for his size. And if you look at him, he's kind of cut odd. You know, he's really thin, really narrow at his feet, but he expands quite a bit as he goes up. And with that, if he's got that balance, I'm absolutely in no way comparing him to Jerome Bettis, but Jerome Bettis had a similar type of thing. A big upper body guy with really thin ankles, really quick, light feet. Scatterbo is like that in the open field. You can see it. He cuts horizontally a lot better than you think that he would. And I think there's something about the size that he has in his shoulders that makes you think he's not really moving all that much and there's not much he can do. But he can shake you off of him, but he can make you flat out miss. And I agree with the patience piece of it as well. He's a smart football player. He knows what to look at, and he's finding daylight. You know, he finds the areas of where to go. And from there, he's not the easiest guy in the world to take down with just one guy. So if he gets through the line at the college level, at least, he's still moving for another 4 or 5 yards at least, and that's a valuable asset to a quick game, a short yardage game, goal line, all those things. He can help accentuate a team that's looking for an impact player in that regard. And Pittsburgh Steelers are the definition of a team that cannot win in short yardage situations, and that's costing them games every single year. They have not been able to figure that out, whether it's the line, whether it's the back, whether it's the play calling. They've not been able to get in sync with all of that and have consistent success short yardage. So a guy like that, I think, could definitely help. Now, are you going to spend a third-round pick on that? Personally, I think you should. I think the value is there for that. But it depends on what else they're going to do between now and the draft and really what they do with their first-round pick. But I think he's a viable option as well.
I'm going to ask you something. The guy that's been polarizing, and I think in part because it's his dad, and that's Shedeur Sanders. What do you think of him?
Unfortunately, I think Shedeur Sanders has to answer questions before other people do. Mm-hmm. And in that, they're not looking at the skill that he has. They're looking at, are you like your dad, who we don't like for one reason or another?
Right.
Are you going to be a leader type, or are you just all flash and basically all sizzle and no steak? If you can objectively take that out, and I would hope, if not trust, that NFL teams do this, what you see with them is a very savvy football player. Mm-hmm. I did not see a guy who made a whole lot of mistakes throwing the ball, and he's operating out of a pro offense. There are a lot of different looks that he had to throw to. He had to read defenses probably a lot faster than his peers did because protection just didn't exist on that team for 2 years. He had to make decisions faster than everybody else. I think you saw last season glimpses of what he would be as a rookie in the NFL just because of that. And I liked it. Now, at the same time, I don't feel it's smart to be 100% traits guy versus 100% film guy. I think you marry the two concepts. What you see with him, he doesn't have great traits. Great traits would be, the one that always pops out in my mind is Jameis Winston. If you saw Jameis Winston when he was a freshman, sophomore in college, before he was number one, that's a guy that's on the rise. He had more arm talent than anybody. Just a cannon, great touch, great feet in the pocket, big dude who could move. Career probably didn't quite work out the way that he would have wanted, but it's solid NFL career, if not unspectacular. Shedeur Sanders does not have those tools, but I gather he's a much smarter player than Jameis Winston is and was. So I see somebody that you can build with, but you're going to have to set him up a bit. You're not going to get the Trevor Lawrence 18-yard outs on a rope to pulverize a defense.
Right.
But you're going to get a guy that you can put in an offense that's not a one-read and react kind of thing. He knows how to read high to low. He can analyze the field. He can see where the ball needs to go. Mentally, I think he's there. There's a lot that I really like about him. Physically, I don't think that he has a great arm, and that's I don't think that's even really all that debatable. And contrary to his bloodline, I don't think that he's an elite athlete either. He's a good athlete, not a phenomenal one. What I see in a lot of ways is Baker Mayfield. And I know that's a crazy comparison. He's not nearly as kind of spastic and emotional as Mayfield is. Take that out. What you have is really kind of the computerized, mechanized reader of the field, distributor of the ball within the offense. He can make plays. I'm not saying that he can't, but he knows where to go with the football. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think he is advanced early on more than say Cam Ward is. Mm-hmm. Physically, though, he's not Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward's a much better physical prospect, and teams would probably rather have Ward overall than Sanders. But I will say this, just in context of the conversation, if Shedeur Sanders was available at 21, I think Pittsburgh would take him. And I think they'd be really happy about that. That's a pretty good player to get at 21. There's a lot to like with him. Now, is he going to be, Josh Allen? Probably not. But there's a lot that he could do to be a very consistent, dangerous quarterback, just in the sense that it's tough to rattle him. He knows how to play within what he's doing. He's a leader. People like him. He's contrary to public opinion that's based in nothing. He's a team guy from everything that you hear.
Yes.
I think he's ready for the heat of the position. And with that, that makes him a little bit more advanced. I think he's a little bit more mature than a lot of other people would be. Yeah. I think he'll have a decent career. I mean, from there, it's hard to say now I can pinpoint the reasons why he'll fail or succeed, but you're drafting the potential of it. You're drafting to get a guy in the building and teach him. What can he learn from this? How is he going to grow? How is he going to take to everything? I would think he's a pretty solid bet. That's just me. In a better quarterback draft, he's not being discussed in top 3, I'm sure, but there's a lot to like about him.
Yep. Short to intermediate throws, incredibly accurate. Longer ball, okay. All right, that happens. Not the greatest runner. High football IQ.
Yes.
High football IQ, right? He's not going to force it. He only threw 3 picks last year, right? And
he threw a lot. Keep that in mind. The entire offense was him and Travis Hunter. He threw the ball a lot and did not make mistakes with it. That's impressive. They asked him to do a lot of things. And
tough as nails. He takes a beating and he keeps getting up and doesn't leave games. So those are the pros and cons I see with him. My friend, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
And Neal Coolong joining us. Half hour brought to you by our great friends at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, light, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. They'll also save you money here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, Saturday 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Birdie Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Stock up for the NCAA basketball and wrestling championships now. Yes, stock up. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Ready-to-drink cocktails now. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, and the Pickle Bar led by the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. There's a lot going on this weekend. Oh, this is going to be fun. Starts tonight with the NCAA basketball First Four tonight in Dayton and St. Francis against Alabama State, then North Carolina against San Diego State. Yes, you heard my cynical point of view in the Open today that I think North Carolina and Texas are both in place in the First Four to give it a ratings boost and thus have the ability to go to the TV people and say, if we expand to 76, these are the kind of numbers we are capable of delivering. Sounds cynical. Does it sound cynical to you, Todd? Yes.
A little bit.
But remember, Todd, when the NCAA is sitting there, it is all about the kids.
Always.
So Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe, scorched earth column about sports being ruined by NIL and the transfer portal. No thanks, Basketball America. I'll be sitting this one out. I'm not sure I'd watch Monday, April 7th men's championship game, but they played it in my driveway. Seriously, the NCAA men's basketball tournament used to be great, but I have a hard time understanding how folks invest dollars and emotions in today's farce that has almost nothing to do with colleges and universities. Okay? He said he had Leo Papil, the former personnel director with the Celtics, right? He says, if you're hoping for a Bob Cousy shout-out in honor of Chris Russo, forget it. It's also a shout-out kindred to Phil Mushnick of the New York Post. I'm not expecting a return to Holy Cross winning the 1947 NCAA championship with freshman Bob Cousy and a roster of legitimate student-athletes. Probably, okay? Who had no home court, practiced in a surplus naval airplane hangar atop Little Mount St. James in Worcester. I'm not asking for a Big Daddy D Latin and 4 little-known teammates from Texas Western beating Adolph Rupp, Pat Riley, and Kentucky in 66, or Brad Stevens having Butler running the picket fence against Duke in the 2010 final. Clearly, cash and cheating long ago corrupted the sweet amateur status of college basketball. And it's been decades since most of the players on the court had real connections to their schools represented on their jerseys. But as we start the 2025 men's tournament, Dan Shaughnessy continues in the Boston Globe, it's also clear that TV money, NIL money, and the transfer portal have broken a once great product and frayed lingering threads that once connected the athletes to the schools they represent. Players who are unhappy with their compensation or playing time rush to the transfer portal, and some big-time men's basketball rosters turn over annually. Big-time NCAA men's basketball has become professional basketball without the rules that govern the NBA. Shaughnessy continues. Take a look at St. John's guard Davion Smith. He is 23 years old. This is his fourth NCAA Division I school. He went from Mississippi State to Georgia Tech to Utah and finally landed at St. John's with Patina. He has played 5 full college seasons and a total of 137 games. Shaughnessy went on to cite that coaches such as Tony Bennett and Jay Wright have stepped away from the sport. He also referenced Pitino at St. John's and John Calipari at Arkansas as coaches who have historically flouted NCAA rules but can now run roughshod over college athletics because now everything is above the table. His kicker complaint is that it's 2025 and the NCAA tournament is professional basketball. Okay. Again, everybody's entitled to the way they feel about it. Now, is there a special connection with guys who stay? There is no question about that. What do you think made such a big difference in Micah Shrewsbury's first year? Which player was beloved on that team in Micah Shrewsbury's first year? It was John Harrah. Why? Because John Harrah, if he had gone into the transfer portal, if he'd gone in, would have been coveted by many programs, and the one that was going after him the hardest was Michigan, and he stayed. Not only stay, he played really, really well, right, in that senior season. But he's beloved here. Why? He stayed. All right? And that's, the 2012 football team, every guy that stayed, beloved. Why? They stayed. They developed that connection with the fans. That's not the way it works today in most cases. Look, James Franklin doesn't have a lot of turnover in roster. Okay? And that's because Penn State really is, at its heart, a development program. And James has talked about this with the players. He was talking with his players this morning about a bunch of things, because I went to the morning workout today. Not my best day. No, I'm just kidding. By the way, if you're wondering who the workout winners were, before we get back to this, I can give you the workout winners because I witnessed it for myself. And among the workout winners this morning, Phil Troutwine went with Venga Ioane, who had a really good day. Jackson Smolik from Danny O'Brien at quarterbacks. Elliott Washington, and I was talking to Dr. Greg Billy about this, is that every time I turn around, Washington's doing something really, really well out there. Well, 5 for 5. They've had 5 of these morning workouts. He's been the competitor of the day in all 5. Xavier Gilliam, picked by Deion Barnes, has been fabulous. Anthony Poindexter went with Lamont Payne, which I completely get. I thought Payne looked great today. Luke Reynolds was Ty Howell's pick at tight end. Again, another big day for him. Kobe Howard was the pick at wide receiver by Marcus Hagans. Quentin Martin really looked good today. Did a great job. He was the pick at running back by Stan Drayton. Justin Lustig went with Riley Thompson again. And Dan Connor picked Dominic DeLuca, who always looks good. But, again, Penn State's a developmental program. Mike Rhodes, and I've talked to Mike about this, right? So it's not as if I'm not treading into foreign territory. Mike wants to have a developmental program. He wants people that they can develop and work. The issue is right now in college basketball is, you need to get, the transfer portal is the opening to get back on track faster. And it is something that is still difficult to grasp. Now, in football, the fans, I think, grasp it better at Penn State because James is so selective with it. Like, I'm watching T.J. Shanahan this morning. I'm watching Kyron Hudson this morning. I'm watching Devontae Ross this morning. You know, Penn State doesn't have a lot of transfers that have come in. Now, do they have transfers that have helped them out over the years? A.J. Harris was terrific last year. Nolan Rucci, where would they have been without him last year? You know, you start going through, like, it may be limited, but the guys that they've had, from the Arnold Ebiketis all the way through. But Penn State doesn't get a lot of them. Now we'll see what they want to do in the late transfer portal. Because in the late transfer portal, you know, because this 105-man roster is going to be very interesting to deal with as to how you do it. But in basketball, you got guys moving all over the place. The guy that was on San Diego State in the Final Four 2 years ago now is at Kentucky. So, I don't know. That's why I keep talking over and over again about the ability to get whatever entity and have collective bargaining. Because I think you've got to be able to know all this out with parameters that are agreed to by both sides. Now, am I going to watch the NCAA tournament? Of course I am.
I don't want to be cynical, but so's Dan Shaughnessy.
You think he's going to watch it?
That's a column. He's got to fill space.
I mean, look. Let's start with this. Does he end up speaking for some people out there? Yes. You know that, right? I'm not. Look, in this business that we're in, and especially, I'm probably more in a position of it than you are because I announce a Power 4 football program and I announce a Power 5 basketball program. Okay, and I've talked about this over and over again. One of the keys today is you got to adapt. And people ask me, how do you adapt to what all the, changing rosters and things like that? I said, hey, look, my job is to announce what is in front of me. How it was acquired, I said, I don't really sit there and really think about it much anymore.
I mean, it's not going back.
No, it's not going back. I mean, look at Wisconsin, for example. Wisconsin, okay, Max Klesmit's a transfer from Green Bay. John Tonji's a transfer who came from Missouri by way of Colorado State. But Trevor Winter, they recruited. Stephen Crowell, they recruited. John Blackwell, they recruited. Carter Gilmore was a walk-on. Right? I mean, Kamari McGee, transfer. But they've got a lot of guys in that roster that have been there year after year. I mean, because McGee may be a transfer, but he's in his third year at Wisconsin. I'm using them as an example. But Dusty May had to turn his roster over. Will Cheddar stayed. Burnett's still there. But the other guys, Golden came with him from Florida Atlantic. Danny Wolf came over from Yale. Trey Donaldson came over from Auburn. They had to do something to get themselves back on track as quickly as possible. And to their credit, they have. But they had to change over a huge chunk of the roster to do it. I mean, a huge chunk of the roster was changed over so they could get. Okay?
I mean, I think we've learned from pro sports, and I think these guys will learn that it's not always, it's not, you can't spend $100 million on stars. You got to figure out the team concept, and the guys that figured out the team concept in this, in this era, the ones that are the ones that are winning.
Well, I'll say this. Here's the other problem. So let's talk about development. James Franklin has a program that is unquestionably a hallmark is development. It's a hallmark. I can give you a couple of guys right off the top of my head that look like they're really trending on the development side. One is Ty Blanding at defensive tackle, right? Another guy that's developing and catching some eyes. And let's see, in other words, let's see how Ty does in the spring. But, boy, he's had a really good winter. It's Alex Birchmeier, okay? Well, those are a couple of guys that on the development side bear watching. All right? Because everybody, the light goes on at different times for different people. Just think about people you work with, even your own kids. You know, everybody's on their own clock. But in basketball, the difference is in basketball, when you have a 13 to 15 man roster, can you afford to develop with the patience of fans these days?
It's a question because I think Mike had the right approach to it with his, with what he did this past season was, trying to get some kids, some younger kids that get them into the program and get them developed. But, then injuries popped up, of course, and that didn't quite work out. I think there's got to be a balance. I think that's been.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the perfect word you use there is balance. I think there does have to be a balance. And the ability, and that's one thing that you should have a better ability with the internal money that's now going to be spent for athletes of the all-important two words these days that mean a lot: roster retention. Right? Roster retention money is important. Football was able to have roster retention this year. Okay? Basketball needs to get into a point where you identify guys like a Caden Mingo and somebody like, and a Yannick Conan Niederhauser and so forth, and roster retention becomes important. And you need that these days. It just can't be, okay, that's this year's team and away we go. And next year's team's completely different. Especially a program like Penn State does need, I'm talking about basketball, does need to have some development within the program and some consistency within the program where now you're adding in 2-3 transfers a year instead of having to feel like, because last year, Mike had to. He walked in the meeting, he had 3 guys sitting there, right? 3 scholarship guys. Great. Well, that means they had to go out and find 9 guys. And they had to do it in 59 days. Okay. Not the easiest thing to do.
It's just popped into my head. Look at what happened at Iona yesterday. They fired Tobin Anderson.
I know.
And he got to the, Patino, when Patino left, they had no roster. He gets to the championship game in his second year, and it's not enough.
Right. Because
of it's very clearly it's some sort of NIL thing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Again, he walks in the room. There's nobody there. In 2 years, he's back in the championship game because he didn't win it. He got bounced. Okay? I got 3 words for their athletic director. You are Iona. Okay. Do you know who you are? You are Iona.
Wonder if there's another 68-year-old scandalized coach out there he has in mind.
Suit's not 68, is he?
No, maybe Cal. Maybe that's where Cal ends up.
Oh, that's just cruel. It's cruel. By the way, North Carolina could not participate in the open practice yesterday in Dayton. You hear why?
Did they have travel issues?
Yep. It's one thing with the NCAA, and I know it's like with planes, trains, and automobiles. I've got it. But the NCAA's travel thing sometimes, I can tell you, is precarious. And North Carolina ran into it yesterday. They got to Dayton 4 hours late, and it wasn't their fault.